Hi, Sean from Philly Boots here with a very special edition of the Philly Boots Rugby Round Table. As you know, this week the RFU announced their Return to Rugby roadmap, which begins on March the 29th. Hope you're all excited. And over the last few days, you've been sending in a load of great questions and really good queries to Philly Boots. And instead of me answering them, because I don't have a clue, today I spoke to Head of Rugby Development at the RFU, Steve Grainger, and put them all to him. First of all, I want to let you know about some new friends that we've got at Philly Boots and the Philly Boots Rugby Round Table, and that's Mindset Sport. Mindset Sport is a new free wellbeing resource aimed at local grassroots sports clubs like all of you. It's completely free and it's there to help coaches, players, parents, and clubs assist the wellbeing of their members. Resources cover a range of subjects from the physical and mental health to financial and relationship support. They're here to help you signpost to get people the right information and the right help that they need. The aim is to normalise the conversations around mental health, LGBTQI+, and ED and I awareness in local sports clubs and give local clubs and coaches the tools they need to look after their players and members on and off the pitch. For more information, head to bit.ly/mindsetsport. That's bit.ly/mindsetsport for all the information you need on Mindset Sport. Now, let's get to my chat with Steve Grainger. Hi, Steve. Welcome back to Philly Boots. Thanks for giving up some time today to talk about the roadmap.
No problem at all, Sean. Good to see you again, and thanks for having us on.
Absolute pleasure. Over the last few days, we've asked people to send in some questions about the new roadmap, and we've got loads as we'll go through. But Steve, just talk us through the getting to this point now. We've been here 3 or 4 times over the last 12 months. How difficult was this time round?
I think it's yeah, you're right. We have been here a few times, haven't we? In terms of optimism and then pessimism. It feels this time that the difference is that clearly government have laid out a very clear roadmap. I think the challenge previously has been everyone in sport and indeed in society has had to respond to individual announcements and decisions. The great thing this time is there's clearly a laid out roadmap. Some of the dates maybe are indicative, but at least it allows us then to plan our activity against that. And I think that the timing for us seems to work well, because what it's doing is it's giving us a graduated return back to some sort of play, enabling us to do some activity over the summer, but really importantly, gives us real optimism that we'll be able to start the 21-22 season, both in age grade rugby and in adult rugby in September as normal.
So can we safely say that the 2020-2021 season is dead?
Yeah, I mean, we did that before Christmas. We announced that the 2021 competitive season anyway. That clearly doesn't mean that rugby can't still be played. And I know there's lots of people out there excited about getting the boots back on and getting back into some meaningful rugby before next season. But in terms of any sort of league matches, any promotion, relegation, that sort of stuff, that was cancelled a long time ago.
Good. So, as I said, we asked the public for their questions on this roadmap. So we're going to try and sort of rattle through as many as we can over the next few minutes, and hopefully people will get the answers that they're looking for. Steve has agreed to come and do another live one in a few weeks' time when we know a bit more from government about other pieces, and as we get closer to the return. So why has there been a switch from this roadmap, after the previous roadmap, to this roadmap, when sort of the lockdown measures are sort of fairly similar than they were 12 months ago?
So what we've just been in a position really where we've reacted and responded to what government have said that you are going to be able to do at different stages. So clearly we know that as of now, any age grade players that are back in schools and colleges, if their schools and colleges are offering rugby activity, then they can participate. For everybody else, It fits really neatly with the 29th of March, when government have been very clear that organised outdoor team sport can come back. So we are an organised outdoor team sport, so we tick that box. The discussion that we then had was about the type of activity that should be, and we were advised that we could go back to the position that we were at in December, so when we came out of the November lockdown. So 15-a-side contact rugby, just excluding the scrum and maul. We've then put our own deadline on of the 26th of April, giving ourselves 4 weeks really of contact training. A lot of players, both age grade and adult, who've been out of the game now for a prolonged period of time. And we think the right thing to do is allow 4 weeks of training before then we break into matches, hopefully, if players and clubs want to do so from the 26th of April.
Was there any thought to not doing anything at all? Well, once the government announced they're sort of coming out of lockdown, was there any thought of doing nothing at all until sort of the regular pre-season would start in sort of June or July?
I think that would have been a very unpopular decision amongst players and clubs, and there's no real rationale or need to. I mean, at end of March, you've still got, even in a normal competitive playing season, you've still got a month of age grade rugby and 2 months of adult rugby, and we saw absolutely no reason to prevent people from taking part. And also from a sort of sport retention point of view, it's really important. We have to watch what other sports are doing, and it was very clear that other outdoor team sports would be coming back. We don't want to be losing players to other sports or indeed cricket as a summer sport.
No, for sure. So on retention of players, it's these questions are sort of aimed at the age grade. We had a lot of people asking questions about age grade rugby because I believe you announced that under 17-year-olds couldn't go up to go and play senior rugby. They've got to wait an extra year. What was the rationale behind that? And does it restrict, especially smaller clubs that might have an influx of 17-year-olds and they're not allowed to play them?
Well, I mean, inevitably with anything you bring in like this, there are going to be a few people who may lose out as a result of it. But we have to be cognizant that, when somebody reaches their 17th birthday, normally they can apply for a dispensation. So you could be in a position where somebody turns 17 in September this year, and they won't have actually played any meaningful rugby for over 18 months. And the last time that they will have played that meaningful rugby, they'll have been an under 15. So in reality, they're only in their second full season of 15-a-side rugby, and all of a sudden we're going to put them up against adults. And we felt that from a player safety and a player welfare perspective, we should give those 17-year-olds a little bit longer. So it's not a full season. We're just saying that for the first 4 months, so through to the end of December, they should play their continued age grade rugby, and then in January they are able to apply for those dispensations, and if that dispensation is granted, they can play the adult game.
One of the questions we had on dispensations was those with current dispensations, are they allowed to continue playing senior rugby, or do they still have to wait?
So the dispensations, this is for 17-year-olds in September next season. So if you're a current, if you've been playing, bearing in mind that there's been no contact rugby really to speak of for the last year or so, and I think we have to stay true here to what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people a graduated return to play. We're in this for the long game. Rugby's not going to stop in the next 6 months if certain players aren't allowed to play for certain clubs. The really important thing is that those players are still playing our game in 3, 4, 5, 6 years' time.
So what are they allowed to do? What are age grade players allowed to do this summer Are there any restrictions on training session lengths, limit to pitches and so on?
So normally what would happen is age grade players, the age grade game would as good as stop, as we know, at the beginning of May, after the first May bank holiday weekend. We'd already extended that season through to the end of May. So assuming that all of the government roadmap stages are reached, and assuming that we then follow on, age grade players will be able to play some matches during May. Then what will happen at the end of May is that matches will cease, and that's normal over the summer period. But what we will do this summer is we've suspended the existing regulation that stops activity, and we will be enabling non-contact match play to take place along with contact training. So clubs will be free to do some catch-up work with particularly the younger age grade players that might have missed out on activity. But we're also very conscious that some clubs won't be able to do activity. Some clubs ground share with cricket clubs. Some clubs will have young players who quite understandably and rightly play cricket in the summer. So that's really the reason why we've then kept those young players in their current age bands from September through to December. So if you're an under 10 at the moment, and you would be moving up to be an under 11 in September, of course you'll still move up to be an under 11, but you'll play under 10 rules through until Christmas. And the simple reason for that is some of those players just will not have had the opportunity yet to acquire and develop the skills that they need to play safe, enjoyable rugby at that stage. So again, for one season only, we need to make sure we've got a really good, clear transition in place.
It's not really a season, is it? It's 3 months. Is it 3 months?
Yeah, it's
September to December.
So they'll do that from September through to the end of December, and then they'll pick up as normal and play catch up from January onwards.
Is there a risk? This is a question that's come in. Is there a risk to clubs of losing this generation of age grade players to other sports, such as cricket or football, as you've mentioned?
I mean, I don't think that that there's always a risk of losing players when they've had a layout from any sort of sport or any sort of activity. I certainly don't think that these regulation changes will enhance that. I think actually they'll mitigate against that, because I just think we can't lose sight of the fact that players, many of these mini and junior players, have had the best part of 18 months out of the game, and it will be spanning across 3 seasons. So I think it's our best chance of retaining them if we bring them back into the sport at a level that they're comfortable at. You know, the danger is you allow it to go on, and the top 20% of players who acquire skills quickly, develop skills quickly, are quick learners, they're fine with that. But it's all those behind it that you then lose as a result of it.
Okay, yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So moving on to playing and training, will there be restrictions? And these are all questions that have come in, by the way. Will there be restrictions by county for arranging fixtures and players travelling to training, or is it just purely aligned to the government restrictions, providing that we can travel between counties and regions?
Yeah, so as the RFU, we won't be putting any restrictions into place on travel. We will have to clearly follow whatever government say. So over the next few weeks, between now and the 29th of March, government will start to publish a whole host of additional guidance for all of us in our normal life, as well as in sport. And we anticipate that will include guidance on travel, guidance on use of changing rooms, clubhouse spaces, sort of off-field protocols, spectators, all of the sort of things that go around the on-field play, and we will have to follow those, and we'll want to follow those. But at the moment, we're led to believe that we're not going to have the same level of restriction on travel tiered areas and all that sort of stuff that we had before Christmas, which clearly makes it a lot simpler for people in the sport.
Yeah, definitely. On training, previously there was a 75-minute maximum session time. Is that upped?
I mean, our strong suggestion is that you shouldn't really need to, and probably don't need to train for much longer than that anyway. There's a huge amount of activity well planned that you can get in that long. In fact, many players would be saying, please, not as long as that. And I think the other thing,
especially not in the summer.
The other thing we got to be really conscious of is we'll be training in a period where we wouldn't normally train, where the weather's likely to be warmer, ground's likely to be harder. The need for hydration is going to be important. So just because we've been out for a while, let's focus on quality, I would suggest, rather than quantity. Get people's general fitness back up, get their skill acquisition back. What the worst thing that could happen here is people go full out, and then halfway through next season, players are picking soft tissue injuries up that wouldn't normally pick soft tissue injuries up. Players have just had enough of the training load. Really important that we graduate people back in, and then all of us focus on having the best possible season that we can in 21-22.
Sort of on that, there was a question came in. Has the RFU considered a 2-week imposed rest period in late August before the new season begins to avoid burnout for players or coaches?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the moment, and it's unlikely that we'll mandate anything like that, because it's very difficult actually to police. What we will do is we'll be producing, guidance that's suggesting players need to have appropriate rest at the appropriate period. I mean, no point mandating a deliberate 2-week layoff if some players haven't been able to get back into training until August because, their clubs, for example, ground share with a cricket club. I think what we've got to do here is we've got to try and put together a framework that makes sense to people, and then let sensible players and coaches and club volunteers about really making their own judgments. And clearly, if players have had the full 10-12 week program over the summer, you would want to I would hope that any decent coach would be saying we want to give them a bit of a break period before we now engage in the league program.
Yeah, definitely. Will contact training, which we know is going to be maximum of 20 minutes at this stage, is that going to stay in bubbles of 6, or is that a free for all?
So again, there's the bubbles of 6 was because government had the rule of 6. Again, our understanding, but until the government guidance comes out ahead of the 29th of March, we won't know. But our understanding is that doesn't apply, which is why on our new roadmap we see steps B and C sort of disappear.
Yeah, why was that?
Well, because step B was groups of 6, and then stage C was activity within the club, and neither of those stages are necessary to go back to those. Now, again, if clubs want to do that, we're saying we can go from A to D1. D1 is non-contact training and ready for rugby matches against other clubs. We're at A now. We can go to D1 on the 29th of March, and then we can go to D2, which is match play on the 26th of April. Now, if clubs want to graduate that themselves, and if a club wants to go back to stage B for a few weeks and just do groups of 6 or groups of 8 or groups of 10, makes total sense. If they then want to graduate to some ready for rugby activity, the old stage C inside the club, again, makes sense, they can. But what we're not doing is we're not imposing that on people across the board.
Yeah, that sounds fair enough. Another one sort of on that sort of same line, do the same distancing, hands and equipment sanitisation routines carry on?
So social distancing off the pitch again it'll depend what government says as we move to the 29th of March. You know, we don't yet know, we don't know what's going to be recommended there. We anticipate social distancing will be encouraged for a while, and it seems to make sense, doesn't it, that everything we know about this virus is that's how it spread. So let's keep the distance until vaccination programs fulfilled. Hand sanitizing, equipment sanitizing and things like that, same applies. This is the new world that we're living in for a while. So no reason to just suddenly stop doing that. We need to keep the importance of everything that we've got used to there going for a while longer.
Just back on the virus and sort of going back to the roadmap and government, I guess. Were you surprised how quickly rugby was allowed to restart and it was announced, and then you had 2 weeks to sort of put this all together, or was it was done and you were just waiting for the green light?
No, I think we were there and we were able to respond, and in the background we were obviously having conversations with other team sports and people. We fought quite a hard lobby to try and make sure that outdoor team sport was part of that announcement. We feel that the benefits of getting groups of people back together in an outdoor space, doing some meaningful organized physical activity, both the physical activity benefits and the mental health benefits of that are so significant that we felt the argument was compelling, and hence you're always slightly surprised when something appears in an announcement, because you never know until it comes out. But no, we were delighted to hear it in the announcement, and then clearly we wanted, as we did throughout the last year, the amount of campaigning we tried to do to try and get rugby back, and we pretty much picked up where we left off.
No, it's great news. Another question that we've got is, when could a club play an inter-club game with the new adapted laws?
So 26th of April is the date for that. So the 29th, assuming we hit, government hit the 29th of March, which fingers crossed, touch wood, everything else we will do. 26th of April is the earliest we could do that. And again, we would be encouraging clubs only to play those matches on the 26th of April if their players are ready and want to do so. And secondly, if they've had a run of training up to that to get them physically and mentally prepared again.
When will the adaptive rules be the same as they were at the back end of the year, or is
absolutely no, absolutely the same. So we're basically returning to the position that we were at that famous 24-hour period at the start of December, when we'd all got so excited about having matches again, and some matches on the Friday night, matches on the Saturday afternoon, and then
the rug was pulled.
All the restrictions back again. So we're back to that. So adapted laws with no scrum and no more.
Lovely. So I've just got a few more. Last year, the RFU requested data in lockdown 1 and lockdown 2 on positive tests within rugby clubs. Were there any numbers, results showing any levels of transmission during those sort of training sessions?
No, I mean the data we were trying to track was just to see what the sort of incidence level across the board was. As you I'm sure are all aware, with COVID, you can't literally tell where somebody's picked it up. So you can't pin that back. And there's a study came out a few weeks ago that was largely driven by Rugby League, but that Rugby Union took part in, largely again. Exclusively focused on the professional game, because that's all that's been back, that shows actually that the on-field transmission risk was very low. Now, It's important that you don't lift that into a general population, because you're talking about probably less than 1,000 players as opposed to 100,000 plus players out in the community game. But all the insight we have is that if people observed the correct protocols, both on field and off field, that they played to the new adapted laws in training, and that they didn't do anything daft around changing rooms and travel and everything else, that the transmission risk was very, very, very low.
Yeah. I think that study came out over the weekend, didn't it? And the NFL were part of that, and a few other team sports, and it came out pretty much nil. But which is, do you take encouragement from that though? To even though it was at a professional level, do you take encouragement that, even though this study was of, as you said, thousands of people rather than hundreds of thousands of people?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the big difference is with professional players, they're contracted, they're being tested regularly. This is their profession by and large. Although we've got the Allianz Premier 15s where it was a different ball game, and they're not all professional; they're working as well. But by and large, a lot of these players are. They're not quite in a bubble, but they're not far off being in a bubble. They're not having to go and work on a factory floor or in a shop or on a building site or teach in a school or whatever it might be, where you're in an indoor environment and maybe are more likely to pick the virus up. So I think it's, the two cohorts are very different. But we'd take real encouragement from the fact that if you're outside and you stay outside and you abide by all the protocols and everything, should be fine.
Good. You mentioned this earlier. I've got 4 questions left, so I'll just rattle through them. The showers being used at the clubs, is there any information on that yet?
No. So we wait to hear on that from government before the 29th of March. We're lobbying hard for changing facilities to be opened up. I would think that there'll be some sort of gradual opening of those sorts of facilities. Whether they'll open on the 29th of March, who knows? But I certainly don't think that the minute any activity's back, we'll just be back to big team huddles inside in a changing room. This is just about people using common sense. And let's be honest, whilst we do get a wet season often in April, it's nothing like the sort of deluges that come in November, December, January. So, again, touch wood, we can cope with that.
No, for sure. That was one of the next questions, but so we've answered that one. This is a really interesting one, which I didn't know about, but I want you to answer if you can. The RFU Insurance normally finishes on the 1st of May. If clubs are going to be playing over the summer, is there any way of that being extended, or is it 1st of May and starts again on the 2nd of May?
So our RFU Insurance is year round.
Okay.
Basically, the insurance is only valid when the structured season takes place. So for mini and junior players, normally their season would end on the 1st of May.
Right. Okay.
If you choose to engage in activity outside of the RFU structured season, it's a bit like choosing to drive a car at 90 miles an hour. Your insurance company are probably going to have something to say about it. For this season, people will be able to follow the new framework of activity across the summer. And again, as long as everybody does as the regulations say, they will be properly insured.
Lovely. And I guess finally, this season's obviously going to be ended. Can people realistically look forward to a full season starting in September?
Well, I mean, you should never say never, should you, at the moment? But I certainly am. I'm certainly looking forward to a new season kicking in September. I think we're all wise enough after the last year that we've had to realise that things can change very quickly.
Sure.
I hesitate to say it, but I really hope we don't go back into another position next winter. But clearly, if the virus does kick back in, if government do decide to impose restrictions again or take advice, we'll have to react accordingly. But in the meantime, it's planning wise, scenario wise, it's full steam ahead to do everything we can to at least get a normal season kicking off in September.
Lovely. I cannot wait. And I bet you can't wait either for this all to be over.
Desperate to get out and see some rugby again.
I can't wait to put the boots back on in a few weeks' time, even if it is just for a little run around. Steve, thank you so much for your time once again. It's a real pleasure. I know everyone that watches these and listens to these gets so much more insight than reading it out of a press release or out of a website. It puts some real meat onto the bone. So I really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thanks as ever, Sean. Take care.
Cheers. Lovely. I really want to thank Steve for giving up his time this afternoon to answer all of your questions. I really hope you've got all the answers that you need to your questions and your queries. As I said, Steve will be back in a couple of weeks' time once we get some more information from government and the RFU send out some more information. He's going to come back and do a live Q&A with you all. So we look forward to that, and we'll send out more details once that is all arranged. And thank you again to Mindset Sport for supporting our show today. It's great to have them on board, and for all the information on Mindset Sport, please visit bit.ly/Mindset Sport. And don't forget to like us. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/FYB Rugby, and Twitter and Instagram as well at FYB_Rugby. Thank you all for watching and listening. I've been Sean Phelan, and you've been watching the Philly Boots Rugby Round Table.